Good morning. So today we're going to discuss renewable and non-renewable energy sources, continuing with our discussion of environmental impact. I'm not going to waste a lot of time because I do want to show you by the end of this video how to access the lesson to escape the room that you're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at different types of energy resources, both renewable and non-renewable. Non-renewable can also be called alternative forms of energy. The renewable energy sources we're going to be looking at are the fossil fuels, and then we're going to be looking at various types of non-renewable energy as well. The non-renewable energy that we're going to be looking at is to conserve energy, lower pollution, have less of an impact on our ecosystems, such as our wildlife and their habitats, and as well as hopefully saving money in the long run. Although some alternative energy forms are expensive to install, they could save money by not having to rely on coal, natural gas, and oil for our energy sources, which can be expensive on the short term. Non-renewable energy is limited. The coal, oil, and natural gas that we're going to discuss take millions of years to form. That means at this point in history, we're using these sources of energy much faster than they're ever going to be replaced, which means we're going to run out of them one day. It also can be very bad for the environment because finding coal takes time and mining means having to dig into the earth. Same thing for drilling for oil. It can be bad for the wildlife around us, especially when there can be an oil spill of some sort, which we saw within the last decade off the coast of Louisiana. And it takes time to clean up. It does kill a lot of wildlife when it's spilled as well. Keep in mind, fossil fuels are mainly made of dead plants and dead animals, and the remains are what form the oil, the fossil fuels. Coal is a solid fossil fuel. It's mainly found on lands where that was once covered in forest or wetlands. It's produced from plant remains. Oil is a fossil fuel that is liquid, and it's mainly made from the remains of marine plants or marine animals, meaning oceans. The marine plants and animal remains are buried and under new sediment, and then the heat and pressure cause the formation of the oil. So it's mainly found under the ocean floor or underground, under lands that was once under the ocean floor but is now above the ocean because of plate tectonics. Natural gas is exactly what it is. It's a gas. It's flammable. You may find it used for the propane of a barbecue or on a gas range stovetop for cooking. Some deposits are found on land, but many of them are found offshore under ocean near the oil. So keep that in mind. As I said, this is mainly used for a lot of cooking. This is used for heating homes, and coal is used mainly for generating electricity. So these are just examples here of each one. As I said, 3 types. They're burned for chemical energy, which can release pollutants into the atmosphere, causing things such as the acid rain that we've discussed in the last few days. We're going to look at how they're formed now. They're formed over hundreds of millions of years by the decomposing remains of the dead organisms that get buried under sediments. So the decomposing remains of the dead organisms form a layer of organic material called peat. The peat is then covered. Peat covered the surface of the earth and on the bottom of the swamps and lakes. Over time, layers of rock cover the peat, and the pressure from that rock cause the formation of the fossil fuel. There are different factors that play into what type of fossil fuel is made. It's how long the peat is buried for. It's the combination of animal and plant, so mainly plant becomes coal, especially if it's on land. Marine animals mainly become fossil fuels, etc. And then it's the temperature and the pressure of the conditions as well that cause the type of fossil fuels that we, type of fossil fuels we find. Just another fact to remember is natural gas and fossil fuels have to be refined. Impurities are removed from them, and then they become useful for things such as cooking or for putting into our gas tanks so that your cars can run. We're trying to avoid fossil fuel shortages. They're limited. Remember, they take millions of years to form, so remember, if you do dishwashers, make sure that the dishwasher's full. Don't do it for a few dishes. Only keep your refrigerator as cold as they need to be. Turn off water when it's not in use, so when you're brushing your teeth. If you're not using the water, turn it off. Turn off lights when you leave a room. Keep your heat down to a degree where you need it, not any higher. So that's if you have control of your thermostat. I know I don't in my apartment. Or use mass public transit, or walk, or ride a bike. Those are other ways to avoid using fossil fuels that we don't need to use to conserve them, and also have the benefit of less climate change and pollution in the atmosphere. Advantages and disadvantages: they can be stored for long periods of time. They are cost effective in the sense that they're cheaper at the moment that you buy them. But if they're not conserved, they can be used up and they can pollute the environment, being the disadvantages. We're now also going to look at renewable energy. As I said, they're sometimes called alternative forms of energy. They're pretty clean for the environment. Some do have some negative effects on the environment that we're going to see. Certain ones can be expensive, such as building a hydroelectric dam. But they're used daily worldwide, so let's take a look. Those videos, by the way, are going to be at the end of the PowerPoint. I'll fix that later. We're going to look at winds, geothermal, solar, biomass, and hydropower, not in that order. So energy from the sun is pretty useful. It can generate a lot of heat. Passive solar heating, so if during the winter you have windows in your home that face the sun, you may decide to keep the shades up for a while to allow the sun to heat your home. Shades are usually used to keep the heat in at night. Awnings are usually constructed to stop too much heat from entering, so if you wonder why there are awnings on many apartment buildings or 3-family or 2-family homes, there's a reason. It's to stop too much heat from entering. There's also active solar heating, where there are tubes filled with water and sun heats the water in the tubes, and then that heated water is stored in a tank for later use to heat a home or apartment building. There are solar panels that are made of silicone, and when the solar panels strike, the sun strikes the solar panels, free-flowing electrons move through the solar panels, generating electricity. And we also have power towers, so when sun strikes these mirrors here, the sunlight is then directed back to this power tower, which serves as a boiler, which then causes the spinning of a turbine to generate electricity. This also would require a lot of land, seeing as it takes a lot of mirrors and a large power tower, so this is not something you would normally see. You're more likely to see the solar panels that are on top of houses and apartment buildings, and now even many public buildings as well, so take a look at some buildings near you. You'll find them facing towards where the sun usually rises and sets in that direction. Solar energy, as I said, it's renewable. There's a lot of potential for a lot of energy, but it can be very expensive to install the mirrors or the solar paneling, And if there's not enough sun, there's less energy. Wind power is when we have a wind turbine, usually looks much different than this. The blades turn with the winds, and then inside there's usually a turbine. The turbine is connected to wires, and then as the wind turns and turns the turbine inside, electricity is generated and flows through the wires. There's less pollution, but some of the disadvantages are when there's not enough wind, there's less energy. It can take up a lot of space as well. You'll see sometimes that some areas have wind farms off their coasts where there's a lot of winds. Also, people are very afraid, and it has happened that birds will get caught in the turbines and hurt. So a lot of environmentally conscious people are somewhat against some having massive amounts of wind power for the sake that it may not be good for every organism on Earth. Water power is also called hydroelectric. It's formed because people build these massive man-made dams. Keep in mind, if there was no water cycle, we would not have hydroelectric power, and we have a water cycle because of the sun, so solar energy is important here once again. The dam is important because it keeps water built up on one side, and then there's a controlled flow of water through the dam, where a turbine spins from the movement of water from a high point to a low point, and then it causes a generation of power through cables that are built from the dam. It can only be built in limited locations, such as where there's a river. It can also be harmful to the environment because behind the dam there could be a buildup of water, and if there's flooding, if there's a strong storm, there can be flooding. This can be harmful because of the flooding for plant life and fish, especially if on the other side, if there's a drought, there may be not enough water on the other side. Also, the dams tend to heat up the water, and that can be bad for the organisms that rely on or live in the water as well. There's also geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is caused by the heating of the Earth. So the heat from the magma below the surface of the Earth causes steam to rise from geysers. This is found in a very limited area. Places like Yellowstone Park, we see these geysers. So this is not the most useful type of energy. So the big disadvantage is the limited locations. We also have tidal energy. As we went over earlier this year, the moon causes tides, high tide and low tide, which can be used to generate energy by the spinning of turbines from the movement of water. This is also in a very limited location because you need to be near a coastline. So that's one of the downsides, is you can only do it where you have an ocean with that, or some sort of coastline for a lake where there's high tide or low tide. There's also biomass, where fuels are made from things such as sunflower, sugarcane, seaweed, corn husks. They are burned to produce energy. It's an inexhaustible fuel. As I said, we can generate lots of alcohols and fuels from these biomasses that are very efficient when they're burned and can produce a lot of energy. It's available throughout the world because those types of organisms are found everywhere. However, it can contribute to pollution and global warming because it will release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and it's still pretty expensive compared to fossil fuels. There are advantages and disadvantages. They don't really run out very often. They produce very little waste. The renewable energy resources can be difficult to and expensive to build. Over the long term, they can become cheaper because you won't be using a lot of coal or oil or natural gas. So over the long term, you may save money even if you have to pay more initially. Renewable resources are not always available at all the same locations, so each area of the world would have their own. If you join me for office hours, we can discuss some of this further. I'm now going to make another video to show you what your activity for the day is.